Alright guys, it's Dokkan time, and today is going to be a how-to build for kind of an older unit, but it's a requested unit for Super Saiyan 2 AGL Gohan. Jacob Scott and Gaming Gohan decided to say, do you have a video for that? And well, I don't have one, but I'll make one. So, as for normal, like I said, if you want to know how to build a unit, let me know. I'll make the video for it. I will make it so. So let's get over to Gohan. So he is a Kamehameha lead 180. He raises defense on 12 and on his 18 key. So he's always stacking defense. He does greatly lower attack on 18 and lowers attack normally. So greatly lowers is it's a 30% reduction on attack, and then just normally lowering is a 20%. So his passive is attack and defense 150, E +2, an additional attack and defense plus 20% at the start of each turn. So just every turn that he's up, he's getting a little bit, tiny bit stronger. He does guard all attacks with a 50% chance of launching an additional super if his HP is 58% or more at the start of the turn. This is a big thing because a lot of the harder fights in the game can hit you really hard in the beginning. So even on normals, because he's at his weakest, he could immediately lose this ability to guard pretty much on turn 3 if you had him on turn 1. So it's a little difficult to keep this going. Now, if you didn't notice, that's pretty much his whole passive. I mean, he has 50% chance to perform a crit against an android enemy, but I mean, that's not every single enemy in the game. So he has the active Awakening into Super Saiyan 2, which is only at 58% or less with an Android 16 on the team, or when HP is 58% or less with an existing Android's ally or enemy from the start of the 5th turn. So you do gotta wait a couple turns for him to go Super Saiyan 2, but let's go over to his Super Saiyan 2 form and look over that. Greatly raises attack and defense on both 12 and 18. On his 18, though, he does greatly lowers attack and defense. He does change key spheres for 4 turns to AGL key spheres, tech key spheres into AGL specifically. He has an additional attack plus 20 and defense plus 10% per key sphere obtained. Doesn't matter the color of the key sphere. He does get an additional key for every key sphere, so if he collected an AGL key sphere, he'd actually get 3 key instead of just 2. He does change. He also, once again, randomly changes key spheres to AGL, to Rainbow key sphere, actually, when facing only one enemy. So that's a weird one, but AGL and Tech key spheres won't be included in this. He does launch an additional attack when facing multiple enemies, so if you're fighting 2, he's always going to launch an additional super. He has 50% chance of launching an additional super attack and high chance of performing a critical hit if HP is 58% or less starting from the start of the turn. And then when your team has Super Saiyan Goku in the turn, plus an additional attack plus 59% performing an Ultra Super, and if HP is 59% or more when performing an Ultra Super, launches another additional super. So he's got a lot of built-in additional in here, but if you didn't notice, the only time he can crit is when you're 58% or less at the start of the turn. So in this case, the only way you're getting to this form is if you're 58% or less. So at the beginning of the turn, you will be at 58%. So no matter what, he's got a 50% chance to crit. Mind you, once he collects those key spheres, he's probably going to put you above the HP threshold. He might not be critting the next turn. So that would be kind of an unfortunate thing. He does have a bunch of additional built into here. So the reason why a lot of people actually have difficulty trying to decide how to build Gohan is because of this. It's specifically this, really. It's the stacking defense point, along with the guard only being active at a certain amount of HP. Some people will tell you to go full-on additional. So that is one build tactic that you can go with, is full-on additional. Because here's the deal: if he doesn't build up his defense fast enough, then he's just going to get absolutely obliterated. he needs to get that defense built up much faster. Let's go over to Halvard calculations to really take a look at the numbers. So without support, start turn defense is less than 200. That's not acceptable. Full build up, which means an excessive amount of turns, Hamasses. So that's 20 to 80%. So 2, 4, 6, 8. So that's 4 turns. So that is very unlikely. It is so unlikely that you will ever get this fully built up, in my opinion, because that would require him being on the field, what? Turn 1, so turn 1, turn 3, turn 5, turn 7. So you won't even get his passive fully built up until turn 7. You're going to need to transform him either by that point or before that point. That's how that's going to go. With 8 super attack effects, he can have up to 1,000,000 defense. Okay. 8 super attack effects. How many times does he have to super to hit 8? Well, he can potentially double super and triple super if he actually gets his hidden potential going off. So, I mean, by his third appearance, he could potentially be at 8 stacks, but it's just probably not going to likely happen. You're probably thinking more. I want to say you'll probably look at around probably 800k defense on average on that 5th turn. And if you don't have him rainbowed with some defense equips, like raw defense equips, then you might even be sitting lower, in all honesty. You might even be out only at 700, 600. And if you don't have your HP above the threshold, he's not guarding, which means he's really not tanking very well whatsoever at a point in the fight where he needs to be tanking. It's a really tough spot because a lot of the content in the game does hit pretty hard right off the bat now. But my suggestion is to go full on additional and then give the rest into crit. Now, the reason why I say that is because this dude's already triple supering in base. If he gets into his Super Saiyan 2 form, he's already got a ton of different additionals built in, plus the hidden potential you'll have. He'll have plenty of defense at that point once he's transformed, and he's providing several additional supers. I mean, he'll be up there. He'll be fine. He'll be fine. He'll be fine. But more so, the reason why you want to put in additionals is to make sure you get that extra stack of defense, because once you transform into Super Saiyan 2, there's no more stacking available. So what you want to do is you want to be able to stack as much as possible before you transform. So that's one thing to keep in mind right there. In the calculations for Halvard, he does have 3 key spheres and 6 key spheres. I would say on average, outside of the very first turn that you actually transform him, your average key spheres will probably range from 3 to 6 exactly, which is the reason why he actually posts this. So he's definitely not getting quad supers, more than likely. He's more than likely not going to. He'll do his base super. He won't have this, more than likely. It's very unlikely you'll be fighting multiple enemies with this Gohan. He'll have this super right here, so that's 2 on the very first turn. After that, he probably won't have that. He'll still only have the 1. Then when your team has Super Saiyan Goku attacking the same turn plus additional Form and Ultra launches an additional super. So on average, he's only actually going to probably apply 2 to 3 supers every turn. Which, from the sound of it, that doesn't sound terrible. That sounds very good, and it is very good. I'm just saying, you're never hitting this amount right here. You're never going to. This is not going to happen. This is a very unlikely scenario. Very few fights in the game will ever get you anywhere near this amount. Just very few. You'll be averaging 2 to 3 supers at most. So if you have support and you've built up defense enough, yeah, you probably will still hit around the 900 million defense marker after supering. Post-super, I mind you. Post-super is a big thing here to consider. But, I mean, you can put dodge into him, you know, I mean, everyone's a dodge advocate at the end of the day on a unit that doesn't perform well enough defensively. But the thing is, Gohan's an offensive unit. He's an offensive unit with a possible defense after being super offensive. You need the stacks. You need the stack. If you don't want to give him crit, I understand. He's got a little bit of built-in crit depending on the scenario. But the thing is, if you don't give him any crit, he's not going to be doing any damage because he doesn't have attacks effective against all types. He's only got the 50% chance right here. Yeah, high chance of performing a crit if HP is 58% or less. That's only going to happen for one turn, guaranteed, which is the first turn that you get Super Saiyan 2 Gohan. Outside of that first turn, basically you're saying is, we kill the enemy now when we transform, or we're not critting at all, pretty much. Because after this turn, you'll be healing up all that HP from the orbs that he will orb change when he transforms. So more than likely, at that point of being built up with the rest of the team, it's very unlikely you'll be below the 58% marker. This is also still keeping in mind that you have to have a Super Saiyan Goku with him as well. So if you don't have Tech Carnival Goku, I mean, a lot of this won't even matter too much. But you want to build them for defense, which is going for additional. If you want to put some dodge into them, by all means, put a little bit of dodge, like 3 or 6 dodge, by all means. But at the end of the day, I use this Gohan for what he's good for, and that's what he is performing additionals, building up his defense, and then becoming an absolute monster once he actually transforms. But that's just my suggestion. Overall, no matter what, you want to focus on additional. I've seen some people put full crit into this guy, and I just don't understand the reasoning for it. Maybe a year and a half or 2 years ago, that would have been relevant. You know, crit would have been relevant maybe on release. You could have argued it, especially if you're a speedrunner. But at the end of the day, you want to build up that defense because the majority of fights are not going to be okay with low defense, especially later on in the fight. He could get you killed later on in the fight unless you actually properly build up his defense. And I mean, as I said before, I mean he has a 50% chance to crit if you're fighting an android enemy on this form. So I mean, if you're fighting an android enemy, he'll do fine. But he's only got a 50% chance to maybe crit if you're below 58% HP later on in the fight. So, but that's just my suggestion. It doesn't mean that it is the word of law. It is not the truth's word. It's not anybody's words. It's your unit. It's your account. By all means, you can go for a full dodge if you really want to, if you want to be crazy about it. I mean, you can go full dodge. You can go full additional. You can do additional and crit like I did. I'm doing full additional and crit personally. This is my choice. But a lot of people's choices will probably be more centered towards dodge. But anyways, that's just my suggestion. Hope it helped you guys out, and have a good day and a good night.